like, like 1982 hot stuff, rabbit, burly heads. Thanks for dealing with that, Dan.
We could also just fill up that pot I have so we get more water quicker.
Yeah. More water, more coffee.
So the thing I was going to start with was, I don't know when I first kind of became aware of what you were up to, whether it was your boat and your your sailing missions, or whether it was building that board, that twin fin for Mavericks. Which one of those things came first?
Yeah, that's funny. The boat came first, and in kind of, I almost feel like a direct way, influenced the keel fin, because I often think of the boat as like an 18-foot 10-channel bottom pintail.
Oh,
just with
funny.
that clinker construction, and
Yeah.
the Aussie guys call the channel bottoms clinker bottoms, but that's a whole other conversation. But as far as the twin keel at Mavs, that was, I was following what Richard Kinvin was doing with the Simmons boards, and I had made some mini Simmons and found that, and you know how like a list style fish or those mini Simmons, you can just push those keel fins as hard as you want, and they're never going to give way. And so that sort of sparked the idea, like, maybe you could ride this in bigger surf. And then saw a Pat Curran gun in the Surfing Heritage Foundation, and realized that plan shape, it was a 10-7 and a long elongated narrow tail, because it was a Waimea gun. But I had the realization that, like, if you were to go about 12 or 13 inches up and make the tail block there, then all of a sudden you kind of have a Simmons style thing. And then I thought about the paddle advantage, and just the line drive nature of that plan shape. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how that.
That was definitely crazy, because there's all these people making weird trippy boards, and some of them look really good, or they're just beautiful objects. But I remember when you were making that, I kind of heard about it, and then you got to be a little skeptical these days, right? Because everybody's doing all these things, you can't engage in all of it. You're like, I'm gonna do that, I'm not gonna do that. I remember being like, I don't know if we'd met before or anything.
I'm trying to remember how all that came about.
But what
too.
I remember was going like, he's making this board for big waves, and kind of like riding you off a little bit, and then putting on the footage, and I'm like, whoa, it looks kind of solid that day. But I also know that you can paddle out on a solid day and get like a shoulder. I know that's a possibility too. So
Yeah,
the whole time in my mind, I was like, he's gonna get a shoulder. That'll be cool. That's rad that he was out there.
Sleigh ride.
And then this big, glassy, ridiculous bomb comes in, and it's like a very proper Mavericks wave, and you're just in the spot, and you just go, and it's like a big, beautiful wave on this self-shaped twin fin, and that's when it clicks for me, something else is going on here, and I'm going to start paying a little bit more attention, whether it's exactly what I want to do or can do. It doesn't really matter, but all of a sudden the interest was sparked after that.
Well, the thing that jumped into my mind is hearing that coming from you and your background at Mavs. It's kind of like.
Well, I mean, I've gotten a couple there, but I don't have a long history there. But I got.
Well, neither do I. But I mean, the stories follow you.
I honestly think I just had a couple lucky session. There were the couple days I surfed it was really clean and good, and I was just in the right spot and feeling in rhythm and stuff. But
yeah,
I will say though, it's
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there were so many guys from San Francisco and Half Moon Bay and Santa Cruz were getting no credit. So I remember when I got a little bit of credit for that, I was like, it almost made me cringe, because I was like, oh my God, these guys do this, completely on their own.
I was always scared of the place. And I mean, I still am, for good reason. And Danny Hess invited me to come up. He just saw, he was like, you are gonna love this. And so I had a couple seasons there. I don't really make it my business these days to surf there. Beautiful wave. But isn't it true that even big scary waves, when it's a big clean wave, it just kind of lights you up. If you're in the spot, it's like green lights. Like, it's not like, oh, this is a big, I mean, yeah, it's like, this is a big wave, but it's more like that's, it's kind of the same if you're surfing a 4-foot beach break and a good one comes to you. You're like, I'm going, you know?
Well, I mean, just generally in bigger waves, my experience was I was always super, super scared watching the models in the few days before.
The lead up,
was just like scared shitless. And then the day of, if it was good and clean and like I knew the place a little bit, it all started to make sense, and it was like happening right now, and it made more sense to me to surf and go have a good time. And often I'd paddle out and go, oh, I'm just gonna sit on the shoulder and check this out, and then, you know, an hour later you just find yourself in the right spot, and one of the locals is like, go, and you're like, oh, cool, let's go for it.
Let's do this.
But the thing that freaked me out and probably got me out of surfing big waves was just like the week in advance. Oh my God, it'd do my head in so bad.
Yeah.
But and yeah, like when did you start shaping?
I started shaping, like, it's always been funny. I've been shaping for a long time, but not full time for a long time. So I started shaping in college in like 1995.
Oh no way!
And I had a very specific vision, and it's kind of like this single fin I'm doing now is what I was trying to do then. There was a couple of things. It was like, yeah, mid 90s, and I remember, and I know you had gotten to that place in your surfing where I mean, the thruster is not, I'm not going to sit here and go, you shouldn't ride, 3 fins are insane. Like, there's a reason the best surfers are on them, and like, they're insane. I got tired because I wasn't doing airs and stuff. I found myself, literally, I remember thinking I was on a wave and I got like my 3 maneuvers to a beach or whatever, like trying to win my NSSA heat, and even though I wasn't in a contest. Anyway,
you said you had that moment.
I had that, yeah, thank you, easily distracted. I had that flash moment, like, man, I'm kind of tired. I do the same damn thing on every single wave, and I had ridden a really cool single fin. A guy loaned me, an Australian guy, I was traveling in the Philippines, loaned me a really killer Brothers Nielsen single fin, and just that clean line really kind of like sparked something in me, and I was on the quest from that time then to figure out how to make a performance single fin, you know?
Rad.
And I think that idea of performance surfing that's a pretty broad spectrum, isn't it? You know, like there's an alley-oop air, and there's also like a really clean, like well-positioned carve. Is performing, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it's like performing and high performance, like what does it all mean and what is all for anyway? Like it's, you know, about if you're having fun. So like what, you know, I've always kind of cracked up at like taking, you know, any one specific line on high performance or like what is good or any of that stuff. So it's really like a perception and like what you're feeling. And if you feel a certain direction pulling you, I think it's interesting to see someone, and I think that's what interests me about what you're doing is like there seems to be a certain level of conviction behind like you said, the boat design and the channel bottom design and the single fins. It's like this really directional kind of like there's a real conviction about this like kind of pure design that from out here is fun to watch because I'm like, wow, where does the conviction come from? Like what's been taking you down that specific road?
Yeah. You know, I think, I was thinking about this just a minute ago. I think if we're agreed that performance, well, all of surfing is a performance, right? Whether you're performing for an audience, that's another thing, but like, you're performing the act of surfing. So riding a traditional log is, you know, but if we can agree, like when I say performance surfing, I mean like doing a floater or doing a cutback or looking for the tube or something. So at the core of that is going fast. You have to have speed, because if you don't, that's the core, right? So if you have speed, then you can open up the repertoire, as Curran said, what he said of his bottom turn. And so for me, I try and have like inherent drive and speed in any of these boards that I'm doing. And then I guess it becomes a question of what's the characteristic then of the turns, and speed can be generated by, like, you know, a really beautiful, to come back to the example, a really beautifully crafted thruster generates speed from the surfer's skill, and even those little ankle movements, right? Those like micro, like pop to your feet and boom and up, and then all of a sudden you're at planing speed and ripping a roundhouse, and you come out with more speed and throw the fins, like, and that's all precise and dynamic. Speed can also be achieved by a rather straight outline, maybe some volume, maybe playing with the rocker, and how you draw the line, you know. And so, but then it's like different roads, and maybe you even have to go through a few more gears in certain boards, you know, to get to the speed. But then once you're up to planing speed, then, you know, then I guess I just make them out of kind of what I'm trying to do on a wave.
Yeah. And who are some of the, like, shapers you're getting inspiration from, and like especially with the channel bottoms?
Yeah, like kind of like I'm a little bit, maybe I'm just trying to, you know, get back to being a Grom watching performers on the VHS tape and just being so psyched. And it's like, it's kind of tired, but I guess so am I. But it's like, you know, like 1982 hot stuff, rabbit, burly heads, you know, like, I mean, whether or not that compared to other stuff, you know, it just really fired my imagination. And I think the Australian sort of like adventure and high performance thing really kind of got in me, just as an admiration thing, you know. That said, now as I kind of mature through my surfing life, I'm finally really appreciating like the like there's this Jeff Devine photo of Eddie Aikau at Sunset Beach, and he's got that, it's just yeah, bully boy, right? Like it just that you just look at that and it just seems like there's lineage in that, and that's like really kind of also seared in somehow. And we've got a few waves that kind of do that, you know, but yeah, I guess so. It's those impressions. So definitely Alan Byrne, and I had the good fortune to spend some time with Phil Myers, who was right-hand man with Cole Smith, and they've got a movie coming out about the Cole Smith channel bottom thing, and you know, and they really had the waves for it. We've got the waves for it too at like, you know, our points when they're going. We've got good waves, you know, and so. You know, it really, the thing that I find about the channel bottoms is they have this moment that it's, it's something different. It's not just, doesn't just look cool. It's not doing it just to do it. There's this like, you kind of weight them, rock back on them, and they elevate and drive. And then through a turn, there's this like, kind of like almost air cushion turning. Like it's not, doesn't want to spin out, but I find that it's like, lofty, like, you know. And for me, I need a little bit, there's a lot of me, you know, I need a wave to give me a little bit of momentum, a little bit of time to get sorted out, but then like fall line, you know, like, whoa.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed when you surf, like you stand up and you like set your line, and you like often drop to the bottom and really like compose yourself before you like get off to the races. And sometimes I'm a little bit like trying to get off to the races too fast, but it's fun to watch you like get into it and set your line, and then everything starts from there.
I think I'm looking for terminal velocity when I do that. So I get into this crazy tuck, even if it's a wave this big, because if that's what the wave has to offer, it's gonna coalesce at the bottom in a condensed, you know, and then God willing there's a little nub to kind of like put that power into, and then you can kind of unwind, you know,
well,
open up from there.
You know? I feel like with you know, you're often riding a single fin or a twin fin, but it's not a thruster where it's like, you know, obviously placement's important for everything, but with the thruster it's like it's really up to you to make sure that you're you're moving along fast. Whereas, you know, a single fin, the cool part and the thing that I actually have trouble with sometimes is being patient enough to put it in its place and let it do its thing. Like I actually, you know, got so into the thrusters for so long that sometimes I can't, like I take off on a wave and my body's just instinctively,
it's like muscle memory,
doing the thruster thing when I really actually need to like hold still and wait for myself to get to the bottom, or get up on the high line and wait there, you know. And so it's neat to watch people who have that different approach, and like it just feels a little more patient to me. And generally speaking, I lack patience, so it's fun to watch.
I know the feeling. But Troy and I were talking about, well, remember yesterday he was saying like using like you could use 100 people, but I think he said Griffin and Felipe, and how those guys and the guys at the pointy end of the spear, let's say the top 10, really are I agree with him. They really are the best surfers in the world. The fitness, the time, the timing, the positioning, what they make those fighter aircraft of a surfboard do is insane. But the thing that's really fun to see in your surfing is you have all of that background. You have surfed at that level, but you're one of the, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's funny, you start making lists and naming names, then you're like showing how much you don't know. So at the risk of doing that, I feel like you're a guy who has gone in with, you know, the stuff you've done on the Pavels, on the speed dialer, and you've ridden various fishes, and you have ridden other boards and taken in other forms of surfing, the Alaya. It's just interesting to me, a surfer of your caliber, proving, I think, my point of it's all performance surfing. It's just how are you utilizing the capabilities of the particular craft, you know? And I think people really kind of get into their niches, which is great. That's how you win a world title, I guess, you know? But like I think about what those guys are doing, like, you know, Asher Pacey was a big air guy, right? And now he's riding a 410 keel fin and ripping it.
The thing that's interesting to me about it, and kind of why I'm fascinated with like different surfers and different shapers, is not because I'm so in tune with it, it's because I'm not in tune with it. Like when I get on different boards, it's really hard for me to feel what's going on and why. So like I come in and everybody's talking about the design, and I'm like, are you sure that's what did it? You know, like I don't know. I actually can't feel it. Like I don't have this like crazy sense for why it is that a board's actually feeling so good. I love novelty, and that's why I get really bored on certain surfboards that I ride too much. But I can't name why I'm having a really good time, whether it's like the fin setup or the channels or the this, that, or the other thing. And often it's like something really unexpected. It's that like I wasn't expecting for a board to work good and it works great. But it's really, so when I see someone like you that has a lot of conviction about any one specific thing, I'm always like, what's going on there? Like, tell me what you know, because
I'll act like I know what's going on.
I talk about like different fin setups more in like ratios, like of the other thing, like I always remember is that, you know, I got lucky enough to get a 10 years of surfboards or 15 years of amazing boards from Al Merrick, and no matter how well he measured, there was still magic boards and boards that were duds. And so that was a really formative experience for me, because everyone will tune into, you know, this board and all the design thing, and I'm like, well, you know, I had this experience with Al where he was measuring perfectly. The boards looked the same, and there was a difference, and it was not really something we could quantify. And so I always have in the back of my mind, like, there's the design and there's the width, and, you know, there's all the measurements and the volume, and it could just be a dud. Or it could be like not your size and not your volume, and it could be magic somehow. And that's my experience has showed me that a bunch. Like I've gotten magic boards that shouldn't be for me, And but generally speaking, like, you know, single fins and twin fins, and even some quads, you know, backside, you know, on your heel side rail, it's just not, you just don't have as much leverage. So you just got to be a little bit more touchy, you know, and figure it out a little bit more. So we were surfing that big beach break, and I got a wave and was just like looking at it, firing down the line, thinking there's a chance I was going to get barreled. And I like forgot that I was riding a twin fin. And I was like up on the front of the board and like trying to hold my rail without grabbing my rail from the very takeoff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this board doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like I almost tipped over. And then from that point forward, I was like, oh, I'm going to surf a little bit further back. And I know some twin fins and quads, you can kind of surf from further up, but that board specifically, it felt better further back. And from that point forward, I moved a little bit further back and you know, just kept it in mind, and it started working great.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
But
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's something about going out on a board that I've never ridden that is interesting to me. Like I would just rather do that most days. Like I often go to the beach with my flippers in the car and go down, and if it's good, I'll borrow a board, and that's super interesting to me.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't know why. Like I don't know. It's kind of a mystery. I wish I had like a little bit more of a linear like progression, but that's been my experience.
Do you find like when you just borrow a board from a buddy, do you find that you can clue into what it'll allow to get a sense of what it will allow you to do within a couple of waves?
I mean, it just depends. When the waves are bad at home, you never know what's going on. But I mean, I can definitely often feel like if I think this board's a dud and I don't want to ride it anymore. I've ridden enough good boards to where I'm like, I don't want to, like, you know, being a dad now and all that stuff, it's like, I don't want to, you know, I'm not getting to surf as much as I used to, and so I don't want to waste a bunch of sessions on a board that's just a crappy board that just feels kind of dead. So I can identify that usually pretty quick.
Yeah, right.
And, but, you know, I don't know. It just depends on how good the waves are and stuff. When's the last time you did a Baja road trip?
Baja road trip? Jeez. Couple years anyway, at least. We like to go to the Valle de Guadalupe, the fam, and, you know, maybe surf a beach break or something.
Yeah, but like one of these where you drive for 20 hours in a day?
That's shoot, probably, you know, 8 years or something. I've been raising kids.
Me too.
At home and squeezing in some surfs.
Yeah, me too. I think it's been at least...
And working.
Probably over or around 10 years. And it was like after, I don't know how many hours we did in the car yesterday, but I was roasted but feeling good. Like all these Baja road trip feelings started coming back. But
that's so good.
Yeah, anyway, thanks for sitting down and chatting for a little bit. Hopefully we get a few more waves in the next couple days.
Yeah, looks like we're, you know, doing what we can do to find something to ride. So
rad. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Thanks, Christian.